Without further ado, I am very excited to introduce our first panel member, Dennis. Spending over a decade in sales and strategy at News Corp and currently heading up the commercial team at Retail Pioneers QIC GRE, Dennis's business acumen and industry experience has provided him with the tools to ultimately develop and launch MISTR, an online men's grooming editorial platform committed to providing men with the absolute best when it comes to personal care. Starting as a simple idea to provide men with the best grooming products, Dennis has grown MISTR to encompass a media platform, attracting the attention of international brands such as Moncler. With an always-on approach to brand development, Dennis sees through the implementation and execution of all of MISTR's operations, from content production to in-real-life activations. Welcome, Dennis. And so tonight, Dennis will be talking from the publisher point of view, from a brand point of view, so very excited to hear from Dennis. Next up, we have an influencer, Katie. So much more than that. Katie Stevens lives by the philosophy, if you don't take a chance, you don't stand a chance. Launching her first business at just 18 years old, Katie has continued to build both traditional product and service businesses across Australia. At the age of 24, she exited her six-figure modelling agency and continued to build her personal brand as an influencer and public speaker. Katie has founded 5 startup companies, obviously a sucker for punishment, including Minding Her Business, a women's networking event series, Pure Skin, an Australian natural skincare company, and Visual Beauty Australia, a beauty clinic specialising in cosmetic tattooing. As well as, in her spare time, an ambassador for Supercars, Australian Sports Nutrition, and Wonder Smile. Katie has impacted hundreds of thousands of people in her journey with a clear message on backing yourself as an entrepreneur and surrounding yourself with a strong team. Welcome, Katie. And next up, we have Farhad. Farhad is making a grand entrance. Farhad is the founder of Changer Studios. Changer is shaping the future of short-form video content. Through its work with leading brands like Google and YouTube, as well as top creators and video experts from around the world, Changer has developed unique insights into what it takes to succeed on the world's biggest video platforms. And I don't even think that does you justice, because you guys do so much more, and I'm really, really looking forward to getting into it on the panel. Welcome, Farhad. And finally, the lovely Jo. Jo is an experienced entrepreneur and business owner who has grown many successful brands. Jo co-founded and is a senior executive of a world-leading salon management software platform, Shortcuts, a Brisbane-based startup success. It launched in 1994 with the world's first touchscreen booking and point-of-sale system for salons that now boasts over 14,000 customers across 45 countries. Her 25 years experience of developing calendaring and booking systems for the complex international salon environment, combined with having a family and managing a household, has led her to her next innovation, LifeSorted, a shared family organizer app. Thank you, Jo. Welcome to the panel, guys. You guys are in for a treat. These are 4 of my favorite humans. Grab the mic, they should be on. So I thought what it'd be nice to start with, it's all very well and good for me to get up there and read a quick bio off a sheet of paper, but I would love to hear it from your point of view. So can you guys share with us a little bit more of a deeper dive into what you guys do, so the audience knows the context that you're bringing to the discussion?
Me first, yeah.
Jump on it.
So my background, as Danny mentioned, I was the head of brand strategy at News Corp for about 11 years. So heading up amazing brands such as Vogue, Vogue.com, GQ, GQ.com, Delicious Inside Out, just to name a few. So I did that for many years. It was a great experience. After that, I'm currently the head of commercial for a Queensland company, Queensland Investment Corp, and I head up the commercial team there for global real estate. Completely different world, right? you got government-owned compared to being from News Corp, and couldn't be further apart. I just got over the late nights and the events at News Corp and working for those brands, but as well as heading up the commercial team at QIC, I also, as Danny mentioned, have started up a side project because I felt like I needed to do more. Building a house, living out of a one-bedroom apartment with a 3-year-old wasn't
enough for you.
It wasn't enough. So a couple of guys I used to work with when I was at News Corp and myself have started a brand called MISTR. No E in MISTR because it was too expensive to trademark. So we kind of just took the E out. We thought we were really cool. And MISTR is basically, as Danny mentioned, it is kind of the ultimate pursuit to men's personal care. And the way we define personal care is kind of a hybrid between grooming and wellness. And we obviously have kind of developed this brand very much an insight-led approach. It's currently an editorial platform, and we're in the transition of becoming an e-commerce platform as we speak. That's it.
Amazing, thank you.
That's it.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Katie. I'm a country girl. I was born in country Victoria. I grew up, launched my first business at the ripe old age of 5 years old. I had a flower business where I used to pick flowers from my neighbours and then sell them to the rest of the people on the street. It was a great business until I actually knocked on the door of the owners of the flowers and I got caught out, so it actually come crumbling down. But at the time it was very profitable. No, but that was actually honestly, my first taste of business. I've grown up with my parents always owning businesses, buying, selling businesses. So to me, I haven't really known anything outside of, I haven't ever actually been employed. So I started a promotional modelling agency at 19 years old, and I had that for 6 years. So back in the day before, I guess, the influencers were a thing, we used to have promotional models. So we did everything from corporate golf days to working with high-end corporate clients to having models go over internationally and with mother agencies on campaigns, catwalk to alcohol promotions, hair, everything in between. So I told myself that the day I wake up and I don't want to go to work, I'm either going to sell or try and turn it into some online agency. And I was fortunate enough to be able to exit and sell that in 2014. And at the time I was actually heavily getting into competing, so I did a bit of body sculpting. That took me around the world. And that led me to launching my beauty salon. So I specialise, as Danny mentioned, in cosmetic tattooing. And I was still constantly connecting people from my agency, from photographers to digital media gurus to promotional models, even those promotional models that wanted to start up businesses. I was helping them to find contacts and photographers to be able to photograph their clothing lines or whatever they were launching. And I thought there's probably an idea, like I'm spending a shit ton of time doing it. And I thought I might just actually organise these small luncheons or like little get-togethers. And long story short, Minding Her Business come to life in 2017. So it's quite fresh, 2.5 years now. And we've taken it right along the East Coast, down Sydney, Melbourne, and have been 100% sellout successful events since then. So I think we're around 20 or so events. And it's a women's networking events group. So we predominantly focus on small business owners to network. It's not traditional exchange business cards and quite structured. It's Instagrammable. Everywhere you look at the events have to be Insta-worthy. So we have donut walls, we have live calligraphy, we have photo booths and all that sort of stuff. So in a nutshell, that's sort of, I guess, the main avenue and business stream that I'm working on alongside the whole I word of influencer that I am. And I'm
glad you're already taking the mickey out of it before we get started.
I was just saying to Joe out the back, I'm like, I always feel so awkward going, I'm an influencer. Some people take it seriously, other people laugh, but I think we're going to talk about that. I don't know, but that's me. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
That's two very comprehensive answers, but so I work for a company called Changer, and we basically sum up work in upskilling. So we work with YouTube and Google with their top creators globally to make them better creators, better creative entrepreneurs. We work with the state government and a bunch of other brands to help with general education, like how does short form video work, what are the opportunities for small business, and then we work with brands specifically to help them better understand the short form video space. How do you create better engagement, better content, and how do you work with influencers and creators to actually have a meaningful relationship?
Love it.
Hi everyone, I'm Jo. I am a hairdresser by trade, and that's where I started my life at the age of 16. And I had my first salon when I was 21, so we have a lot in common to talk about our salons. And I was really just lucky enough, to be honest, to stumble across a couple of entrepreneurial developers, and together we created software for my salon that I thought I needed at the time without actually even knowing what it was. So it was the year when Windows first came out, and I was looking for software for my salon, and one of these entrepreneurs sort of came along to the demo of the best software that was available at that time, and it was DOS-based, and it had, the cardboard over the top of the F keys, F1 to add a new client, F2 to end a sale. Anyway, I thought it was fabulous, and he convinced me that there was a better world out there. And yeah, together we created Shortcuts. So this is 25 years now down the track, and we're in 45 countries, and we have 15,000 customers, so it's pretty exciting. But kind of like you guys,
Even
I've
the
always
people
had
on
other
the street
things.
are cheering for you. That's
cheering.
well, thank you.
Yeah. Always had other things on the go as well. Had a family in the middle of all of that, and so life got next level hectic and crazy, and I came up with another idea for a technology solution using, I guess, the knowledge I had around booking haircuts is kind of the same as just managing a busy life. You're managing a lot of people in a salon, you're managing a lot of people in your family. So yeah, we've just launched an app a couple of years ago called LifeSorted, which is a shared family organizer app. Yeah.
Amazing. And so obviously we're here today to talk about influencer marketing. So before we get into the really gory questions, can you guys tell the audience just a little bit about your experience with influencers or influencer marketing? So what context you bring to sort of that point of view?
Yeah, so going back at news, that's 5 years ago. So testing me
started,
here.
yeah. You started
so it
influencer
kind of
marketing.
Yeah, so we had a couple of platforms that we started off in media, and it's definitely evolved. So sorry if I sound really old when I'm talking about influencer marketing back in 2014. But we had SpyStar, which was a Vogue platform, which was recruiting influencers and producing exclusive content or branded content for brands. So if you think about it, you got a brand like Vogue, who is supposed to be the authority in fashion, is supposed to be the credible source, was actually still using influencers to produce content because brands were requesting it, so they were evolving. So then we also had GQ, and GQ had GQ Insiders. GQ Insiders was about 8 guys that actually with Scrunch, a collaboration with Scrunch that Scrunch helped put together. And it was putting these guys who were actually complementing the target audience that GQ was targeting. But the opportunity there was to amplify the content. And kind of approach a different audience, an unduplicated audience for GQ. And then with MISTR, which is more current, is we're kind of using influencers as ambassadors more of a transactional relationship. So we're using our influencers to feature in content, launch different pillars of our business, which I can talk about later on, but also to produce content for us, such as regular columns, and be seen as authorities and credible sources of content for our own platforms. For example, we're using a guy called Luke Zocchi. I don't know if any of you guys know who Luke Zocchi is. Chris Hemsworth's PT. So he's based in Byron Bay. He really believes in the brand MISTR, and now he's producing us a monthly feature for MISTR that is focusing on a training regime or how to, train while you're traveling, etc., depending on what the feature is.
Very cool. That's really cool. I think there's probably two sides of what I do, influencer marketing. For Minding Her Business, I'm kind of lucky because I've got a lot of friends that are influencers. So the spin on that is I invite my friends to come to my events and they have an influence. No, for Minding Her Business has actually worked really, really well because we've encouraged that we have a certain ticket allocation where we encourage influencers that come along to our events to be able to obviously share their experience and then reach out to, businesses or people that might like to join, our events in the future. I think one thing for having influencers relating to Minding Her Business is that we don't just invite any influencers to come along. We're really specific with those influencers actually fitting the mold of wanting to learn about business, wanting to connect and collaborate or work in that space. So for us, perhaps a high-end catwalk model that has a huge following probably isn't ideal for our influencer to come to our event, whereas someone that might, whether they have a side hustle or a genuine influence working with brands. I know Scrunch, a lot of your influencers have actually attended our events as well as yourself. It's worked actually incredible to be able to leverage and reach out to have further reach for people to come to our events in the future. And then for my self-influence, I actually work with a handful of brands that I'm an ambassador. Some I work on a contractual basis, some very few on a one-off, and then a couple that align with who I am, my brand of health, beauty and fitness. And I work with them on a long term where I sort of will promote their upcoming products. For example, I'm an ambassador for Australian Sports Nutrition. And they might have a launch of a new product, they might have a 30-day challenge or something like that, but more so their culture is about alignment with what I do, and it's all about bringing health and wellness into my life and then sharing my experience with others. So I guess that's my spin on an influencer, and then the business side of it as well.
So good.
I think we like to think of us as a bit of a bridge. So we work with creators and influencers all around the world, and we help them find the right type of brand deals to fit them, and also then how they should act with the brands to make that a smooth process.
Are you telling me that influencers don't know how to work with brands?
Well, the professional ones have no problem, but there are some who are not used to dealing with brands. So we create that bridge in order to make that easy for them. And on the other side, we work with a lot of brands to help them assess what do they need in terms of the right influence, and what does that right relationship look like, and create the bridge the other way to the right influencers with the right support.
Cool. So my experience with influencers has been really recently, mostly with LifeSorted, launching that product and knowing that the best way to get that into the market is a combination of PR and genuine influencers. And we've had the conversations around, there is no silver bullet, and I've had hit and miss with some of the experience with influencers, but so finding the right fit with the right audience where the product really resonates is something that we've been playing with for the last 12 months, and it's been really interesting. So I know we're going to get into the detail a bit later. Yeah.
I need that in my life, by the way. The app is so visually appealing, and I'm just going to cut in, but Jo, I just saw her brand started following me last night, and it's not often that I jump on, see a brand, go, oh, they followed, what are they about? Unless it's in that first, whatever it is, scroll of your feed, and it was there, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting name. And then I clicked on it, I was like, this is so visually appealing, and I'm everything about pretty colours, and I use my iPhone calendar, and it's so freaking boring. I share it with my staff and my mum, and I actually didn't know Jo was going to be on the panel, and I slid into your DMs, didn't I? And I was like, I love that. It looks so good.
That's a way an influencer should connect with a brand. Genuine, right? It was fantastic, yeah.
Well, while you guys are on a roll, so, let's get started on the juicy stuff. So obviously, influencer marketing gets a bit of shit in the media, if we're all being honest. And what we just saw there was this amazing, authentic experience. You legitimately didn't know you were going to be on the panel together, created a conversation, you were genuinely interested in the brand and reached out. I would see you as an anomaly. But I think, you've had success on both sides. You've had success being an influencer, and you've had success using influencers to grow your brands and products. And why do you think it is that influencer marketing gets so much crap out there and people say that it doesn't work?
I think that's actually a really hard question because there's so many different elements to being an influencer. I think the first thing is if you aren't educated about how it works in marketing, it can be really difficult to get your head around why people get free shit, quite honestly. And there's a lot of people that I hear, oh, you know what, we'll just get this for free. And they're, you know what, if it works with you and your brand and if that's what you want to do. And I have friends and associates that I know that genuinely have a really good influence, but they will use that to their advantage of go, you know what, if we go to this cafe, we don't pay for this meal, we just take a photo, and if that's what their food blog page is about, then great, that works. I think it gets a lot of heat in the media is because some people just don't understand, and then B, there's a side of it that brands have worked with influencers and perhaps they don't understand the process and they think, well, I gave you something for free and you didn't promote me and I didn't get sales from you. And I think the most important thing is that when you're working with an influencer, it's, first of all, it's not up to the influencer to work out what you want to achieve with your business. Is that going to be brand awareness? Is it going to be a further reach? Is it going to be engagement? Is it going to be sales? For me personally, I like working with brands longevity because it's so hard to cut through so much stuff on social media now that I know that if a brand goes, Katie, what are your rates? And will you post this and I get sales? I know that there's a high chance that you're not going to get the sales that you could have got 4 to 5 years ago, because there's the stigma. It's someone looks and goes, oh, yeah, protein buddy shaking her hand, oh, she's selling shit to me, I'm not buying it. She gets that for free. I'll have my friends sliding to my DMs and go, oh, what are you selling now? And I'm like,
Thanks, genuinely,
yeah. Well, it's changed a little bit over time, but I think, there's both sides to the story. I think there's the side where perhaps you're uneducated that, oh yeah, influencers just get free shit, and maybe there's influencers out there that genuinely just like free shit. I don't know, but there's influencers that also work as a brand, and if they work as a brand, there's a lot of work that goes into content creation, which I know you guys know a lot more about, the back end and that sort of stuff, but it's, the content creation, the writing the captions, obviously as an agency to facilitate all that side of it, there's so much work that goes into it, and it sort of can't be for free, so.
Oh, absolutely, and it's funny you say that. I remember a story, we were working with a high-profile food chain, and we had an influencer event, so we placed influencers to come and launch this new menu item, and the PR team was there, and they were watching these influencers take the content, and they took 1,000 photos, and they had a friend, and their friend was holding the food, and then, are they going to eat that food? They're like, well, their job is to get you an amazing picture, so they're probably going to eat it, but it's going to be cold. And they were kind of like, oh, I didn't realize that actually influencers go to so much effort. So I think it's, it's really interesting that I don't think brands realize what actually goes into the perfect post or the perfect caption or the perfect strategy on social media.
And then you get onto like the Insta husbands, the Insta, I've got an Insta mum. And so when we go traveling, I stay at like accommodation, and we actually were in Bali recently, and I got this gorgeous floating breakfast, and the water is freaking freezing, and the breakfast is floating, right? So it's close to the cold water, and Mum's like, can we eat it? I was like, show me the photos. No, just one more, hang on, I'll run around this side of the pool. Mum's like, you know what, don't worry about breakfast. Can we go to a cafe? But did you get your photo? I'm like, yeah, I got my photo. Let's go to a cafe. But it genuinely was actually content creation for the hotel. So it wasn't actually about the food. It was about the placement of the photo. But it was quite funny because she was pissed off.
And Dennis, what about from your point of view? So, speaking of influencer marketing in the media, obviously when influencers kind of first started being a thing, there were lots of articles around how they were, consumer journalists and, replacing, but I guess, GQ and News kind of jumped on it and used it to their advantage. But do you think that there's any sort of stigma around influencers replacing journalists, or in an uncredible kind of way?
Gosh, do we have publishers in the room? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Danny.
Just throw you under the bus casually.
I'm not a publisher anymore, so a big publisher, I should say. I guess it just really comes down to how does a publisher measure success? Like, what is their measure of success? And if you think of a traditional publisher, it comes down to 2 things, or maybe 3 things, but the 2 that really come to mind is reach and income. So if anything's got to impact that or change the norm, then definitely it's a threat. So if you think of it, when you think about reach, consumers now have more choice of where to go for their consumption of media or their journalism. And when you think of income, media brands and advertisers now have more of a choice of where they're spending their dollars. So in the last 5 years, you can just imagine how many media brands have actually closed. And they've closed because they probably don't have influence. And there's all these influencer marketers out there who have their hundreds of thousands of followers and really good engagement. So how are they going to compete with that? So yeah, it would be a threat. I think the question is more around with publishers is what is really their value proposition, and does it exist still? And that's the key thing. So if you don't have that USP, and you don't add value to the consumer, whatever channel you're on, in the real world space, in print, in social, in digital, then you probably shouldn't exist, and you probably, you're obviously going to be out of business pretty quickly. So it's understanding that, but as Danny mentioned, you think of the brands that still have authority, like a Vogue or a GQ, they jumped on it straight away because they knew the future of where these influencer marketers were going to head, and they're still doing it. And they're still producing content. and they're using talent as models, and they're putting influencers on front covers of magazines like Vogue. Sorry, I'm talking about Vogue a lot, but yeah, it just kind of explains the power of influence marketing.
Yeah, awesome. And so we've started at challenges in the industry, and I know, part of Scrunch's role as both a platform and agency is to protect all sides. So it's our job to make sure the brand is protected, the agency that engages us, or the influencer themselves. But yeah, Farhad, I was really interested in your opinion on what you saw was kind of some of the biggest challenges, because I know you work on both sides at the moment as well.
I think a big challenge has been, 5-10 years ago, the bottleneck used to be with publishers, with media houses, with brands in terms of what content got made. And that's shifted to the bottleneck being with us now in terms of attention. So with all the social platforms that are way open, you've got all this content flooding onto the market, and the only thing that's really stopping it from being effective is how much we can take on. And I think that's something, it's a big challenge to get your head around, especially as a brand. And then the other issue is the people that have the influence in this space. These influencers are these little islands with sort of this mass and very dedicated influence. And how to tap into that is a very tricky thing to do sometimes because of the way the influencers work with their audience, and navigating that in a constantly moving environment. That is a big challenge.
And what do you think? I know you guys work really closely with YouTube as a platform. Do you know their insights or their opinion on influencers and creators? Oh, you're smiling. I feel like there's a story coming.
Oh, no, we do. We actually work directly with YouTube and their top creators. So, yeah, look, YouTube know their top creators. All creators have to be sustainable long term, right? Or they won't be able to make content. And depending purely on advertising revenue from the platform itself is a very, very tricky thing to do because it's lumpy. You can't guarantee it's going to be any particular way. So they want their influencers or their creators to be sustainable, and that means, working with brands and doing brand deals and understanding how that works. So they're absolutely all for it. And obviously, the more professional the creators are, the better the relationship's going to be, and the better structure the deals are, the better it is for everyone.
And Joe, so from a brand's perspective, and you touched on this earlier, that there are mixed results, that no one influencer is the silver bullet. You don't just drop 10 grand on one person and think that your whole business is going to change. Can you share a little bit more about your experience and how optimizing it's sort of something that you've had to do?
Yeah, definitely. We've definitely treaded slowly with LifeSorted and dipped our toe in and done a fair bit of testing and measuring. And I think we were really lucky initially when we launched to beta. I did a couple of posts in a couple of big Facebook groups, and it just went bananas on its own. So I had a lot of organic growth in the early days, and we didn't really need to go actively looking for influencers. We were just kind of catching up with making sure we were looking after all the families that were joining. And then influencers started reaching out to me. And it was really natural, and it was really authentic. And I think the first influencer that we worked with was in the organising space. And she asked me, she said, "I've just found your app. It's freaking amazing. We've been using it and really genuinely loved it. Would you come along and do a free webinar in this course that I run about teaching people how to be more organised?" And that was just a really nice, natural entryway in for me and for the relationship with influencers. And I had a few like that in the early days that were just great. And I also had people that would, do shout outs and tag me, and I didn't even know who they were just because they'd found it was just really great. And then we ended up doing collaborations so it was just really natural and slow and good. And then that was in Australia. And so we just had nice organic growth and really working with really great influencers. Then we launched into the US and the UK and thought, great, I think I ran into you and I said, yes, so we've launched, how did it go? Yep, well, we're on the App Store, right? So what next, right? So we thought, okay, well, we'll do what we've done in Australia with influencers, and we got a completely different result. So with influencers in the US that had the same level of engagement, they seemed to be a really good fit, as in the organising space or the busy family space, just got nothing, like sometimes crickets, and you'd be paying a lot more money for an influencer in the US. So And the other thing too is it takes time. It's not, so we launched in the US and we're like, great, so now we want all of these people in the next 4 weeks, and the influencers take forever to come back to you, you know, and then the ones that do that go, yep, here's the deal, here's the money, it's not authentic. They haven't really used the app. It doesn't work. So I think that's what I've learned, is to take my time and find the right people where it's really is a good fit, and that's a better investment. And it's a win-win for both, because if LifeSorted is a good fit for the influencer, then they are bringing value to their community by talking about it. So yeah, it's finding that win-win situation that I've learned. Yeah.
I just thought of something else as well. So yeah, no, it is interesting about getting the right fit for the influencers, because the people who you say, oh, influencer marketing doesn't work, often they had a tricky experience because they didn't get the right fit. They just look at these big numbers and think this is going to work for me. But you can get tremendous results even from small influencers if you have the right fit. I mean, we have a podcast called Creator Generation, very good podcast.
Follow it on
iTunes. Get on it, yeah. And we just basically talk to top creators and experts around the world on, you know, this new environment. And we had one of the people on the podcast do a little shout out on their channel. Now, it was at the end of an 18 to 20 minute video, a 2-second shout out saying, and oh, hey guys, I also did an interview. He didn't even say what the interview was. He had put the link in the description. We got 2,000 watch hours from just that 2-second shout out, because the fit for his audience and what we were doing was so good. Yeah. It was completely aligned. And that was like, I had to look at it a couple of times to figure out where it was, and I'm like, wow, that got 2,000 watch hours just from that little clip. So yeah.
And so, look, we've got a room of brands, agencies, marketers here. So it'd be good to share some insights. And one of the things that I'm hearing coming back from you guys is that influencer marketing is not just an Instagram sponsored post. You know, there are so many ways, which, you know, when you look at the media, that's kind of what it feels like, is that we're just talking about and bagging these people posting on Instagram. But, you know, you guys have talked about some really interesting ways, like co-creating a webinar or using talent to create content and all that kind of stuff. Dennis, what are your thoughts on influencer marketing, where it's going? You know, you obviously are a new brand and a new publisher. How do you think that people should be using influencers?
Yeah. So with MISTR, just a bit of context on how the brand started. It's still in its infancy stage. We launched in April, but a lot of, and I'll get to the answer, but I've just got to build it up a little bit. And this is a really awkward position. But
just get comfortable, Dennis.
No,
you know, just lean in.
Katie.
Yeah.
So with MISTR, you know, we started in April, and the idea really came about, and it was very much insight-led. So I get access to a lot of retail spend or market expenditure insights. And can you believe, like, this year, men are spending about $1 billion just in Australia alone on men's grooming. And it's growing by about 3.7% year on year in the next 5 years. So by looking at all that market expenditure, I'm actually able to break down, as anyone has access to this, if you get access to Euromonitor, Roy Morgan, whatever research, you're then able to have a look at what men are actually spending, in what category are they spending it. And it's all about beards. It's these ugly things that men are spending their money on. So the brand MISTR came about from looking at all those insights, but now we needed to build a brand, and we need to build a bit of brand equity. And it became, how do we tap into the emotional attributes? And the emotional attributes for MISTR are social, connected, rebel, shibusa, I can't really say, I'm not Japanese, but it means balance and balanced. And then sprezzatura, I'm not Italian, so I can't really say that, so let's Aussify it, just sprez. So sprezzatura, and that word basically means studied carelessness, effortless nonchalance. Now that was really long to the answer, right? All of that basically, by looking at our emotional attributes, the insights that we get access to with businesses such as Scrunch, we're then able to then look at how do we align the MISTR brand to the right influencer. So we look at the insights, looking at the categories that are going to sell with an e-commerce site, and then we look at what emotional attributes can be complemented by an influencer. So who actually then represents social, connected, rebel, shibusa, sprezzatura, right? So then we align all of that. So you've got the emotional elements, which is what you guys were kind of touching on earlier, but then you've got the insights behind it. So it's that data And we don't have access to that, so Scrunch will help us with that. So it's aligning that, and then I mentioned it earlier as well, but I'm really kind of passionate about not just the sponsored posts, as Danielle was saying. It's about what else can you do with these, guys or girls. It's more around producing content with them, producing content that they're proud to actually share on their own platforms. So not just getting them to produce the content, but produce the content with them, direct it with them. I guess that's the way we're doing it at MISTR. And then having that ambassador kind of approach to the relationship. So just don't use them once. If you're going to use them and they work, just continue using them, build that relationship, because that's how you're going to maximize the opportunity for your own business.
I think that's actually something you're quite passionate about as well, Katie. We were talking about that in the green room around how, we see brands have so much more success when it is a longer term engagement.
It's just authentic. I think even before when Joe was saying, it was obvious that these influencers were just taking the money and then posting, but they didn't even know how to use the app. It comes back to understanding the influencer. And I think the best thing is, like Dennis said, is actually building a relationship. There is nothing more stronger and more powerful in life than relationships when it comes to business. And longevity of relationships, I think, you always want to keep that door open, always keep that relationship going and be personal. And I mean, I know for me, every single day I get emails in from brands, hey, we want to collaborate, hey, we want to do this, can we send you either free stuff or what are your charges per post? But the ones that I actually stop at are the ones that go, hey, I saw you in the Bahamas last week. The photo, and I'm like, oh wow, like you actually know who I am. Like, or I hope you had a great event last weekend. It looked awesome on socials. And I'm like, you know what? They've taken 2 seconds to learn a little bit about me. They don't want to just use me, abuse me, and move on to the next. And I think creating those relationships is really important. I mean, I know even I've partnered with Scrunch and worked with a couple of brands, and they've been ongoing. Or now I'm working with another brand, and it's a second product to that brand. So I genuinely really liked the first one. I think I actually tried it for like a month before I was like, yeah, cool, all right, I'll post. That high maintenance influencer, no, but genuinely,
I didn't say it.
But if you want to build a relationship, it's cool because I know that the second and third and maybe even fourth time it's going to become easier because I understand the brand, the product, and the language and the tone that these brands speak. So it just works. Whereas it seems to be actually more effort to post for a brand that you don't know about and look like a dickhead and have all these messages about it and you really don't know because you just got a sweet $800 in your account. It's kind of like, yeah, I mean, I know people that do it, and you know what, if that's what pays their bills, I think that's actually going back to the other question before, is that's actually what really gives that bad name to the industry, because it is actually a business. Like being an influencer, creating content, working with brands and things like that to create these relationships. If it's a one-hit wonder, I mean, I think it's more work, to be honest.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's probably 2 points that came out there, relationships and data. And Farhad, I know you're my data man on the panel. From, I guess, both an influencer side and a brand side, what do you think people should be looking at? What kind of data is going to make or break influencers or brands working with influencers?
There is a lot of data. And actually, I was having this conversation at lunch today with a brand, and they were saying that like they have access to all this information, all this data, but they don't know what to do with it. And I think the easiest place for people to go, in this is a very practical sense, is like views and likes, right? Which in many cases is a very soft aspect. Even YouTube, in the way the algorithms are programmed, look at likes and views as a very, very low-level indicator of how good a video is. What you'd really be looking for is the data around engagement and watch time, like how engaged and how long are people spending absorbing your content. And then after that, do they go on to another point in which they view your content? Like that is the gold standard. They'll watch one thing, then they'll watch another thing, and if they do that completely, that is the data you'd be looking at to see how successful it is, rather than say, oh, yeah, I got like, 10,000 likes. What does that mean? You can have like 100 views and they could watch, a 100-minute video completely. Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's controversial. Yeah. How do we all feel about that?
Well, I don't. Yeah.
Is that the question?
Quite. Well, we are having a conversation, so feel free to answer the questions.
I'm fine with it. I think it's great especially for a business like MISTR, because I think I'm really passionate about the content we produce, and I feel like it kind of is like an even playing field in a way, because if I see someone who's got 2,000 likes, I just like it because it's got 2,000 likes. But I think now it's all about just looking at it and going, oh, that was really cool. That's when you like it.
It's about actually appreciating it rather than just following the crowd.
Yeah, that's me.
That's interesting. I'm actually I'm a little bit torn between this, because I know it's all about the likes and stuff like that. But from a brand's perspective, how do you know who's on an engagement level? How do you know who really is an influencer? Because let's be honest, you can buy this stuff. You can buy likes you can buy likes, and you can probably even buy comments as well, but you can buy followers. So if you see someone with a big number at the top, what happens if you go and spend maybe I'll take that back a bit. What happens if you go and spend $1,000 for someone to do a post because they have 100,000 followers and you don't sell one product? Well, how do you, you can't even see how many likes. You don't know if that's a real thing or not. So I guess there's that side of it.
Well, it'd be remiss of me if I didn't say use
data.
Scrunch.
You need to use Scrunch.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, got it in there.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, and that comes back to the whole marketing strategy and everything. As an influencer, I think it's great because I feel like the engagement of comments and interaction goes up. It also makes it harder for us to actually produce and work harder to not just do that standard selfie or that, hashtag, to actually create a little bit more depth to the content of the captions or the language that we use and things like that. So I don't know, I think there's good and there's bad. I'm not saying that bring the likes back. They still are in parts of the world, aren't they? It's only Australia and a few other countries they cut it.
6-country test.
Yeah. But for smaller brands, and with Minding Her Business, we work with a lot of startups, and a lot of startups don't understand data, again, where they need Scrunch. But
thank you. Now they're on the payroll. I've got this.
But I think it's really important. I think it's really important for them to actually know that, look at the comments. I think you can still see them online anyway, but to actually see how much they reply. See if an influencer actually engages with their audience, because if they're not engaging on a forefront, then they're probably not writing back to DMs either. And I think that shifts a lot of the language of working with a brand, exactly what Dennis was going on about with building relationships. So that side of it, I guess there is, the component of more captions, more content, more engagement, and how to work for us.
So good. Now, I have not seen any audience questions come through on the DMs. So now's your chance. If there's a burning question you have for the panel, I'm going to do a whip around and get their top tip for working with influencers or for doing influencer marketing. So if you do have anything you want to ask, jump on now. So guys, let's leave these guys with a nugget of wisdom. If you could give the brands, the agencies and the audience one tip to run successful influencer campaigns, what would it be?
Scrunch?
Yes.
I kind
Extra points for you.
I kind of feel like I'm repeating myself, but is that okay?
That's okay. Summary's good.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Don't make it a transactional relationship. Make it, a long-term relationship. Make it an ambassador relationship. Yeah. I think that's the only thing that really summarises what I'm trying to get across and where we're seeing success.
Love it.
And then just kind of think of just different ways to collaborate. Challenge yourself, and as Katie says, take risks. So I think you just need to just trial things and see what's right for your brand.
That's a good one. I think, pretty much the same. Knowing your numbers and allocating that budget to spend on it, because we do live in a world where it's not just, TV commercials and billboards. I think that traditional media it's still there, but it's very out of reach for a lot of businesses and different size, smaller to medium businesses. Influencer marketing is very approachable or affordable as such. So, do a bit of background research and engaging conversations. And same thing, I guess we're a little bit repetitive here, but building relationships is pretty important. Having that email interaction. Maybe influencers have agencies that they work through and makes it a little bit more difficult. But I think that's probably the biggest takeaway, I would say.
I can see Dennis is next to you wanting to add in.
I was just going to say another thing that, and I'm plugging my own business now, but MISTR as well, is what we're trying to do is, try to actually produce the content with the influencer. So rather than just sending them a brief over email, it's actually meeting them if they're wanting to meet with you, but meeting with them and actually saying, you know, can we collaborate on the shoot together? I think that just saves some time, and actually that would, again, I'm repeating myself, but build a relationship.
Well, and another one, so Katie, you mentioned budget as well, and so we've had 2 questions roll in about that, and a few people might have an opinion about it. Do you guys feel like, I mean, obviously influencers all charge something different individually, but do you guys have an opinion on what it takes, like what kind of minimum spend you would need to actually make an impact with an influencer campaign? Putting you on the spot.
I think, you know what, in anything in life, if you're selling a product or if you're selling a service or you're working with an influencer, everything in life is about push-pull. What can you give in return, and also what value can you add? So if you're working with a minimum budget, and this is probably something that you'd be able to add more on with marketing strategies and whatnot, but if you don't have a budget to go and pay Temi Hembrow $20K an appearance, I think it's about that now, then, you know, go back to, like Joe said, you don't need to work with the big numbers. Start with the micro influencers. Split test, work different things, work out some different strategies, and I think that, you know, you can start really minimal. It doesn't have to be in the, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to invest in influencer marketing, but always adding value. And you know what, I think at the end of the day, everyone loves free stuff, and influencers, you know, don't just send them a t-shirt that they need to take a photo in, send them like 2 for their mum and 1 for their friend, because if they're going to organically want to share that with someone else, that is micro influencer marketing for free. I think things like that, just outside of the box, building relationships in different avenues. Yeah, I'm definitely about, like, even an experience, unboxing. When I get a dirty old Australia Post bag that has like a dress in it and it's not wrapped in tissue paper, I'm like, yeah, cool, it probably needs to go through the wash before I put it on. Whereas if it has like a cute
First
little card,
appearances are everything.
I'll put it on my Instagram story. I'm like, this is cute. It has a letter, it's about this, it's got a photo of me printed from Instagram. I got an invite to an event last week and I was like, that's a photo off my gram, but it's really cool because then I had like chocolates, and then you think about it, you take photos. They just got a free story to up to 16,000 views or whatever. So
yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because we're talking about building relationships, and, you know, without wanting to put the commercials into it. But if you do build a relationship and you do go above and beyond, influencers will go above and beyond. You will get the free stories. You will get the, oh, that beauty product is now in my beauty cabinet, so it just appears randomly in other posts as well. So I think if you do go above and beyond, influencers will go above and beyond for you as well. So we've got some audience questions rolling in, and we are running out of time, so let's try and knock off a few of these. One that I think is for Farhad. What makes for amazing, highly watchable short form video? Oh God. Oh God.
Okay, it's a tricky thing. Okay, I'll take a step back, because my tip was actually going to be really understand the platforms you're working with, or what the influencers are working with, right? So for example, if you're working on YouTube, YouTube is a very specific platform. It rewards specificity, right? So it focuses on creators that have passion and they build their channels around passion. That is absolutely what you need to do to succeed on the platform, right? That's the number one tip we always give creators. So yeah, it would be like, and every different niche, everyone's different. You'd create content in different ways, whether it's in animation, whether it's in beauty, whether it's in how-tos, they all have different formats. So what is the perfect short form video? That varies depending on what area you're in. But the key thing I would say is if you build it around passion, right? And you show that sincere love of what you're doing, that is often the key in short form videos that really brings it across. And that's from a creator who's vlogging to someone who's doing a how-to video, even if it's on like building doors, right? If someone's really passionate and engaged in building doors, it's better than someone who's completely bored talking about it.
Totally. Okay, another audience question, anyone can jump in. So what is the etiquette for asking influencers to share their engagement metrics on the gram post-campaign? Is it asking too much to get those stats, or is it now a standard part of the transaction?
honestly set that precedence and the expectations to begin with, because I personally don't have an issue with it, but I know that it is a lot of work, because in the past you screenshot one part, then you don't have the analytics and they come back to you, and everything's time, and especially if you're going back through archive, if you do 10 to 20 stories a day and they follow up with you a week later, you've got to go back through like 150 stories to try and find these analytics, and you're like, that job's done. So make sure you set the expectations, I would say, and if you want those stats and analytics, then outline that in the first agreement. I guess that's probably...
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
And I do want the stats.
Oh, totally. I think from a brand point of view, that leads back to the conversation we were having about optimization. How are you going to know what to optimize and who to put into that long-term contract if you don't have those stats?
Yeah. 100%. And I'll just add to what you were talking about before with the relationship things. We've decided now we will not do any influencer campaign without either a face-to-face meeting or a Zoom call, because having a conversation for 15 or 20 minutes, they actually understand the importance of the brand and what actually matters to us as a brand, rather than just their opinion of it from what they see on Instagram. So I think that's...
How have you gone with that, Jo?
Hey?
How, setting that precedence and having, outlining that, do you find a lot of influencers will give you the time to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And if they don't, then they're not the right one for me.
Yeah. And is that because their families, their mothers,
and they're organising experts, and I want to have a conversation with them so that together we can work out what's the best way for your audience. What else do you offer? How do you add value to your audience, and how could we support that? So whether it is doing a webinar, whether it's, I've done a few Instagram live interviews where they've brought me in as an organisational expert to chat about how do you organise the family, and then we talk about it together as a conversation, and they'll get questions from their audience, and we come in. So it's not a sponsored post, but it's a collaboration that works. And all of the influencers that I've had those Zoom calls with or met for a coffee, we've had great results. And I do definitely set the expectation up front to kind of go, we want to know what can we expect to find out how it went, because it's very important to be able to analyse it. I mean, I'm a data tracker, so I've got tracked codes right the way through and attribution. And when you've got an app, it's difficult because somebody can see an Instagram story about an app, and you've got to swipe up to a landing page, which I can track all the way through. But if they bail on your Instagram story and go straight to the App Store and search for LifeSorted, I can't find that, right? So we've been working really hard on getting good attribution, because I know what I could get directly and track from an influencer, I probably get the same amount that go direct to the App Store. So we've done tests around that and done things only on specific days. We've got a baseline of downloads, and we know that when an influencer sends 600 people to a landing page, we get 1,200 sign-ups. We know that that's come from the influencer.
See, I think that's really cool, and I know that a lot of businesses out there, you're very number savvy. I love that. I actually am not super, I really watch, and I'm predominantly on Pinterest, LinkedIn, and Instagram, my top three, and I should be more on Facebook on a business side, but one thing that bothers me, and just to add to that if you don't mind, is that when brands want to talk to me, call, have you got 5 minutes, or the whole, I want to pick your brain, if I read those words, I'm literally cut, see you later. It's really consuming for time, and that's where you go, I need an agency, or I refer to my agent or whatever. Yep. But for that, you know what you're talking about. For brands that perhaps don't know, but they kind of want to build a relationship, it's frustrating because you find yourself, and potentially, I've had countless conversations of, what do you think I should do? I just dropped off something to a supplier from my event, and she's incredible. She gets a lot of sales from our Minding Her Business events, but she's like, I'm thinking of doing this, and you're an influencer, and da-da-da, and 45 minutes. It took 45 minutes to pick it up, and it took over 35 to drop it off. And I'm not a counter on the time, but I actually was a little bit late here tonight, and I was sitting there, and I genuinely want to help, and I go, well, you want me to work for you, but then there was no expectations, and I literally felt like I just consulted in this brand, and I'm all about helping people, but I think there's actually a line that I feel that there has to be that planning, know your numbers, expectations and everything. Otherwise these brands go, oh, hey, I kind of want to work together, but what are you thinking? And can I get those numbers and stuff? And that's interesting, because I have actually had people reach out and want to have a phone conversation, and I just won't, because I can't cap it. Yeah.
I think it depends on what you're selling, right? So an app is a different thing to a t-shirt or, you know what I mean? Or even, going to a restaurant. So I think we might be a little bit of a special case in the fact that the perceived value for LifeSorted is huge. You say to someone, we got an app, it's going to, make you feel organised, change your life. Everyone goes, I need that, download it. crickets, they do nothing, right? They need the we need the influencer to take them the next step to say, you need to spend half an hour with your family all together. This is how we did it, all with the apps, and we all got synced up, and then everyone, we transferred everything across and it worked. So taking it to that level, they need to have experienced that themselves, and we need to have a conversation. So I want the influencer to get a great result because I want long-term relationships with influencers as well. So when we do have those Zoom calls and we have those chats, that's the kind of thing we talk about. I say I'm really interested in something long-term if you really love it, and if it's not the right fit for you, then that's totally cool as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I unfortunately am going to have to wrap it up there. I know we could just sit here all night if we did have another glass of champagne. So we didn't quite get to all of the audience questions, but we did say it was going to be a 45-minute panel, and I think we're nearly up to an hour and a half, so we'll cut it there. However, the Scrunch team is networked in, and a few of the panelists may hang around. So if you do have any burning questions, please find someone, hunt them down and ask them. We're here to educate on influencer marketing. So thank you so much for coming along this evening. A quick shout out to the sponsors again: Byron Bay Cookies, Ballistic Beer, Keepsake Photo Booths, Event Letters, Globe West, Say Cheese, The Artist Vendor, Lewis Lotherington and Sean from You & Co. It's been fabulous speaking to you guys. We do have a little token of appreciation. Hopefully there's a magic person that's arriving. Yes, she's coming. Really appreciate your insights. I know you guys are so busy taking over the world, and I appreciate that you can share your knowledge with the guys in the audience. Everyone here tonight is a brand, a marketer, an agency, and they're trying to up their game on influencer marketing, and I know the insights you guys have provided have been phenomenal. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.